Welcome guys to a special episode of the Your Mate Tom podcast where I interviewed Shane Mauss, stand-up comic who's appeared on the Conan O'Brien show, Joe Rogan Experience and the Duncan Trussell podcast where I discovered him. This guy combines two of my favorite things in life, psychedelics and comedy. Me and my friend Philippa just watched his show, A Good Trip, here in the Comics Land. It was fucking hilarious. And how good was it?
It was alright.
It was alright.
It was good, man.
Yeah, it was a fucking awesome show. There's still 2 more shows in Melbourne and 1 in Sydney. Go check out the link below. I highly recommend for you guys to watch it. But I really appreciate Shane taking the time to do this podcast with me, even though he just arrived in Australia. He did already 2 interviews, so he was a trooper for going through this. And this is this is definitely my favorite podcast I've done so far. And guys, you're going to love how fucking weird and deep we went with this conversation. As many of you guys know, this channel is completely fan-funded by you guys, so if you do want to help grow this channel and this podcast and allow me to do more ambitious projects like documentaries and things like that, then go check out Patreon. It's the best way to support me. You can also get merch as well. But anyways, guys, enjoy the podcast. I'm sure you're going to love it. Peace. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Your Mate Tom podcast. I'm sitting here with Shane. We're in Melbourne in his hotel for his current comedy tour. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm wonderful.
Yeah?
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Can you just talk about your current psychedelic comedy tour, A Good Trip, and like how did this come about and why psychedelics? Because I know it's a very taboo subject and you're like incorporating this into your stand-up.
Yeah. I started comedy 13 years ago. I was originally kind of a late night comic when I wrote a lot of like short, goofy jokes, and I kind of got bored of that after a while, so I started doing themed things.
Yeah.
And especially once I started traveling internationally, there's a lot more themed shows internationally. And so I started experimenting with a few different themes. I did one about mating behavior. I did another one about our why we evolved negative feelings and emotions and stuff. And then this is my 3rd themed show, and it happens to be about psychedelics because I just had lots of material about psychedelics.
A lot of experience.
And I've been doing them for now 21 years. A few years ago was the first time I was actually at a show in Houston, Texas, and it was like there was these horrible floods everywhere, and so no one was coming out to this show except the comedians were there was like a comedy contest where they'll have like basically comedy clubs sometimes have a bunch of new comics be like, hey, be in this comedy contest to see who's the funniest in the city, and it's basically like a ruse to get those young comics to bring all of their friends to the show, and during a time of year when the club wouldn't normally draw a lot of people in. And
it's just like a promotion kind of thing.
And so I was there through this week, but I happened to be there the day early because they're going to have the contest, and then I would go up while they were tabulating the scores, because I was there through the rest of the week just doing regular shows. Well, because there's a flood, normally this club would have been shut down, but because comics are such suckers, they all showed up for this contest, but no one else was crazy enough to drive there. So it was just me and a bunch of young comics there, and then the club still wanted me to go and perform at the end of this anyway, and I didn't want to just perform like my regular shtick to a bunch of comedians, because comedians are bored with comedy.
Yeah, there would be a lot of pressure, hey? Comics, because they know how, like, the things that you do, it's like, I don't know.
There's a lot of, like, there's a lot of tricks and stuff that we use on general audiences that don't really work on comedians.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, screw it. I'll just start talking about psychedelics. And I just started telling stories and some of the jokes that I had and stuff. next thing I knew, I was talking about psychedelics for like an hour. And so I was like, oh, looks like I have a new show. And so I put it together. I started testing it out in a few like music indie venues and stuff like that. And then it went really well. I never had a response. Like, I'd been doing comedy for like 11 years at the time. And I had never had people, I mean, it's not a show that like just anyone's going to like, but if you're at least curious about psychedelics and you see the show, it's going to be like the best show you've ever seen. One of those.
Yeah, I was going to say, either like, love it or hate it.
If I just drop it on an audience full of people that has no idea it's going to be about psychedelics or anything, there's going to be people walking out. But when it's people that know it's going to be about psychedelics, I get like standing ovations after. So I'd never gotten a reaction like that, and like people just went crazy for it. And so then I put together a tour, which at first was going to be like 30 cities, then it was going to be 50 cities, then 80. It ended up being a 111 city tour that I did in the U.S. Nice. And now I'm here in Australia.
That's crazy, man.
So
I guess with psychedelics, how did you get started with them? Like, was it just you just dropped acid and, as a teenager, it's kind of the stereotypical thing. Was it like this whole series of synchronicities and like, I'm getting called to the jungle, I must do this?
I still haven't been called to the jungle. I've gotten some synchronicities. I mean, I've been 21 years of doing psychedelics, and I just started getting synchronicities recently. Like, I'm
what's the deal, man?
I'm such a like hard-headed, skeptical person. That it took psychedelics like 20 years to finally break down my mind to be like, okay, I guess that can't just be a coincidence.
I suppose, maybe.
And I'm still skeptical, even though at this point, now it's like, I thought about it recently, and it's like, something with DMT. It's either like I could err in two ways depending on how I'm looking at it. Either I could think that I'm like seeing aliens or beings or whatever and be crazy for being wrong. Or I could not think. Like, what if instead I've been talking to aliens this whole time and then have been like, whatever my imagination, and I've just been like blowing off.
And I just be like, fucking humans.
They're like trying to give me codes to save humanity, and I'm like, crazy imagination. So I don't know. I don't know which one's crazier to believe anymore.
Yeah, it's hard to, like, I kind of jump between them, more the materialistic, it's all in my head, and then it's like, no, this is actually something that we're tapping into.
It's always, always like when I'm tripping, I'm like, oh, I'm tapping into something, and then afterwards I'm like, nah, couldn't be. That couldn't have happened.
And like, how do you like cope with getting information from that psychedelic space and articulate the experience so well? Because it's so, for anyone who has been in a psychedelic experience, it's such an alien world, for saying the least. I mean, there's no words to put, right?
Yeah.
Like when I trip, it's like I might get 5% of it, I might get something back. And when I do get something profound, I'm like, all right, remember this when you're sober. And then when you're sober, like, fuck, what was that thing? Or like, and how do you differentiate between something that's really profound, like you said, like during a trip, it can feel really like, oh my God, I'm getting communications with God right now. And then afterwards you're like, okay, no, that was just stupid. Like, how do you differentiate between something that's really profound and something that's just whatever?
Well, sometimes it's kind of both. Sometimes, I wish I had a good example. It's on like kind of the tip of my tongue right now. But sometimes I think that I'm seeing some message from like God or whatever, and then it'll be really profound. But then later I'll realize that it had more to do with like my insecurities that I had when I was like 14 years old, and it was like it had something to do with like me not having the courage to ask a girl to a dance that somehow that somehow revealed itself as some weird
Okay,
goddess
some
and
yeah.
some octopus woman, and like that was like somehow some girl that I forgot that I couldn't get up the courage to ask the dance when I was 14 turned into an octopus in my head. So, which is also interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like to think that I'm pretty good at pulling things out, but I was told that on ketamine that like I did ketamine in a clinical setting.
All right.
And they were like, "You're gonna be out," and I'm like, "Oh, just
how
totally out."
many like sessions was it?
Oh, I just did one.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were just like, "Yeah, you'll be totally out."
Yeah.
And then I just and like he gave me the first shot, and I'm just like, "Yeah, not feeling much anything."
Intravenously?
Yeah.
Okay.
Intramuscular.
Okay. Yeah.
And then gave me the second shot, and then and this is all I'm making a documentary, and so this is all on camera. And gave me the second one, I'm like, well, I feel like I'm tripping right now, but I'm supposed to be out, and like I'm definitely not out. I just feel like I'm tripping a little bit. And then the guy's like, okay, and like shot me with a third one, and then I completely disassociated, but I was still able to talk through the whole.
Wow, and you're supposed to be out.
Yeah,
the first one, yeah.
I talked with I had someone else on the documentary that deals with ketamine, and I was like, so do people ever like talk through a ketamine trip? They're like, no, they're out. And I'm like, well, what would happen if someone were to talk through their ketamine trip? And he's like, well, did you not hear me? That just doesn't happen. And I'm like, well, I talked through my ketamine trip, and then they're like, well, then we need to look at your brain once you're dead.
Well, go through it. So what was it like for something that was supposed to put you out, but you're somehow conscious?
Yeah, everything turned black, and then I saw this weird, like, bouncing ball come toward me, and then as it got close, the ball turned into, like, it looked like a globe, but with, I can see it in my head, but it's kind of hard to, it's like a, you know what it almost looked like? It's like a Pokemon ball or something like that with like pieces coming out of it. So like little pieces would come out and I would see a piece that would be like a part of my life or a part of some other universe, and then it would go back in, and then another piece would come out and it'd be this other piece of this universe. But
that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Have you done ketamine before?
No, it's my first time. Have you?
Yeah, but only in a recreational. So I've done it like twice. And I was like, it was weird, but I had this small dose. I just felt a bit dissociative, but nothing like too profound. Like, oh my god, this changed my life. But again, it was different settings. So
I didn't think it changed my life either, and it was supposed to be good for depression. But I wasn't suffering from depression at the time.
Okay.
But we had a filming schedule, and so it was, we had to do it anyway. But I wish I had it during one of my depressive episodes to see what would happen, because maybe it would have a bigger effect.
And why do you think it helps with depression?
I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. I mean, I think that just.
Yeah.
I think we get stuck in ruts really easily. And I think that anything that's a disassociative, especially one that has like a pleasant feeling, like this sense of connectedness, we're all connected, oh, that feels so nice and warm, is just, there's something very comforting about that.
Yeah.
And what are those? There's like this criteria for what makes a spiritual experience. I can never remember all of them, but it's like a sense of unity is one, duality is one, a sense of like divine, like absolute truth.
Yeah.
And then there's one that's like it's hard to put into words. That's the cop out one. Yeah. Yeah.
How was your experience? It was ineffable.
Yeah, exactly. Like, fuck you. Try harder.
Give me a couple words at least.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, people have these. I mean, for me, I remember early on in my experiences thinking that before psychedelics, I remember thinking that the world was this crazy place that I didn't fit into and I'll never understand. And all the things that everyone goes along with just seem absolutely insane to me. And I just don't get why people like the things that they like. I don't know why people are so excited about sports or their
I
country.
think a lot of people
or
are feeling like this because you're just describing exactly how I felt
yeah.
growing up. Yeah,
And
you guys are fucking insane.
Yeah, and I just like all the bandwagon stuff. I just like keep me away from it. And I remember my first several times doing mushrooms being like, oh, I guess I was right. Existence is a crazy thing, and it really is.
Pretty weird.
It's like, it's strange that I don't know, and I don't know that like if tripping is sometimes tripping's nice because when you come back it's like, whew, I'm back. All right, but then, other times I don't know.
I know other times like you want to stay there forever. Other times it feels like you're physically dying. And I'm going to be crazy forever.
Yeah.
I've really done it this time.
Yeah, and then sometimes I'm like, I wish. Sometimes I'm sad. A lot of times I'm sad when, like, especially because mushrooms and I go back for so long, and they rarely ever screwed me over. And so usually,
so you never had like bad trips on mushrooms, really?
I've had some, but usually they're ultimately good. I mean, early on, there's like the negative things of like having to look at yourself in the mirror on mushrooms. It's just like, oh no, I can't stand it. Now I love it.
Have you tried looking at a phone when you're on mushrooms and it just feels so out of place?
Oh, I try not to look at phones when I'm on mushrooms. But
the only time I did was to call my girlfriend to come and get me because I think I need your help.
Yeah.
Which is why it's important to at least if you don't have a trip set, I think it's always a good idea to have like someone on standby just in case shit hits the fan.
I think the's like a weird website like tripsit.me or something like that.
Yeah, I've heard of that, yeah.
And there's just like people standing by. So if you're like having a bad trip, you can just like log on and then
it'd be weird that it's like a complete stranger, but I guess it's better than no one helping you, but
I want to be a helper too. Like I think that'd be fun. Just sitting around like someone pops up and they're just like, I'm freaking out right now. Like, okay, all right, go and get yourself some water and come back. I guess that's pretty much all they do. Is they're just like, why don't you go and get some water and come back, and like getting people to like go and take an action and get some water and come back. It's like, I accomplished something, and then they feel better.
Yeah, or even just being around someone who is sober kind of anchors you a little bit more to this reality. Whereas if you're completely by yourself, let's say in a dark room, things start to get a bit shaky and you start to float away.
I love tripping by myself, though. It's like my
so I did until, I guess my last trip, I just had a terrifying trip and I just haven't gone back.
What happened?
I had a very high dose of mushrooms, 7.5 grams, and that's a B species, which is probably equivalent to 10. Yeah. And I'm not, like, it was because I had 6 grams the previous week and it didn't do anything for me, so I'm like, oh, these must be weak mushrooms or whatever.
Yeah.
But little did I know.
Yeah, I mean,
a bad batch.
Yeah.
And then I took that. And then it was just one of those, like, almost going, it was full-blown psychotic episode where, like, human constructs just went into oblivion. I started to just, even the concept of, like, friend or life or human was just like, what is this? And I was just like, I couldn't even speak sentences, and the visuals are so intense that it didn't even matter whether I was opening or closing my eyes. I was just swimming in this fractal playground and just not knowing what was what. And it was fucking scary, dude. Like, and a lot of catharsis. Like, I've never screamed that much and just sobbing. Like, I've never cried like this, but it felt like a lot of deep repressed emotions. But then I called my girlfriend, or trying to, what is my girlfriend's name again? Yeah. And like, all the letters are like coming in, fractalizing. I'm like, but then she came to my rescue, and like I was still freaking out, but at least I had her. Yeah, but it was just full on. It felt like I was dying. Like, it's really weird, but like my heart was just going crazy. My stomach was churning. My skin was disintegrating bit by bit. My teeth were falling out, which was scary because I felt it. Yeah. By the way. And yeah, it just felt like I was physically dying, and I just saw myself. I was just in this timeless loop, and just in this psychotic kind of episode, like constantly. And I would have like maybe.
I don't care for those timeless loops.
No.
Those inescapable.
And no one can tell you
loops
time.
where
Just taking
everything
drugs.
happens
Yeah.
again and again.
Forever and
Just
never.
forever.
Every moment is eternity. But in hell, yeah. It sucks.
Yeah. Oh man, I do have one time I had to use a phone. It was the weirdest situation. I was on LSD with a buddy, and we called an Uber to. We were going to go to a hike, and the Uber it said it was like 3 minutes away. It took like 20 minutes, which is unusual, but we didn't really care. We were tripping, and then the Uber shows up, and it's and like this old, like 80-year-old, like Chinese guy jumps out, and he's like, "You are my very first Uber ride!" Yeah! And but then he's like, "Where are you going?" And we're like, I'm like, "I already put it in the phone." And he didn't. It was his first, so he didn't know how the app worked.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like. He's probably like doesn't know how phones work that well anyway.
Yeah.
He's like 80, and I imagine his like grandson just like set him up and then just like get out there, and so. And I've never driven Uber, so I don't know how the app works on the driver's end of things.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to help him from the back seat, well on acid, and his phone is in Mandarin, and like literally,
some cryptic code.
I'm like, what the fuck? And I was able to figure it out, but yeah, that's.
What, you figured out the code?
Yeah, I figured out the codes. Yeah, it's just a green button at the bottom.
Cool.
Yeah, color coded. Yeah, I actually we started driving, and I think he was a 2-footed driver, because the car was like and I was like, "Are you in first gear or like second gear or low or something?" And he couldn't understand it. He could barely speak English. I'm like, "Are you in drive?" He's like, "Oh," he has no idea what I'm saying. And his car was really strange and foreign, and I was trying to figure out the transmission from the back, and I couldn't tell if he's in the right gear. And finally, I was just like, stop here at this sign, because he's gonna get on the interstate soon. I didn't want like his engine to
Just get a
explode.
feel what it would do.
Yeah, and so I was like, "Steve," to my buddy in the front, I was like, "I don't think he's in drive. See if you can put it in drive for him." And my buddy on acid starts messing around with this transmission. Then we realized he was in drive the whole time, and we were just messing around with this transmission. And the dude was just totally cool with it, because as far as he knows, that's just like how Uber works.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's his first experience.
Yeah,
like,
tripping dudes just
tripping
get
acid,
in and start fucking around with your training.
What are you on?
I think like 2 hits.
2 hits.
Two or three
Well, like
hits.
you were saying to me before, acid doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know why acid never really. I mean, I always have like a
Interesting.
positive experience, but usually, you know what I usually do on acid is I like clean my house or something like that, or do paperwork.
Yeah.
I think of things that I don't like doing normally, like habits that I want to build, and then I take acid and try to build those new habits, or like I'll exercise or something like that. Like I always think that psychedelics are opening up this pathway into the non-conscious world. So I think that our consciousness and our non-consciousness are trying to communicate with one another, but they're speaking these completely different languages.
And then there's like this ego who's like the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Two worlds.
And yeah, exactly. So when that gatekeeper is shut down by psychedelics, it can like, "Hey guys, here's what I want you to actually do down there. Now that asshole supervisor's gone."
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean that's what I love about psychedelics but it took me so long to. I mean, I just did them in high school, just like doing drugs, you know. It took me a long time to figure out like the correct way to. The idea of like setting an intention or anything like that, or integrating afterwards, that was like 10 years of tripping before I was
really?
like, "Oh, That makes sense.
Maybe I shouldn't take this in a club in the middle of the city or something.
Yeah.
And like, for those who are listening, saying, "Oh, these two junkies, you're just taking drugs and justifying it." Like what?
Psychedelic
junkies
is a weird. Yeah,
It is,
that's a weird thing to be. I guess maybe I am. I'm a junkie for the experience. I don't think you can really be addicted to psychedelics. I'm never just like, I need psychedelics.
Man.
But I mean, the closest to addiction I have is like, sometimes I'm like, what the fuck was that? I better take another peek in there, man. Make sure that. I sometimes I'm like, is the multiverse depending on me? Did I leave work undone in there?
Yeah. Well, so as you know, there's a lot of groundbreaking scientific research on psychedelics and this whole re-emergence. So what are your thoughts and opinions on the therapeutic and medicinal use of psychedelics, particularly on mental illness, and what role have they played in your life? Both the positives and the negatives. We can't just talk about sunshine and lollipops. They can be pretty fucking scary experiences. But profound as well,
I think that mushrooms have done more for my depression than anything else that I've ever found.
Okay. So would you say that's your psychedelic of choice?
Yes. DMT as well, but DMT is like so crazy that it's like, what do I do with that? And like after a DMT,
it is like that. Yeah, what do I do with that? Yeah,
I don't know what to make of any of that.
I don't think this is relevant to
you. No, I don't think so. But mushrooms is definitely relevant to humans, and. I mean, I think that the therapeutic potential, there's just so many benefits to it compared to, when I was doing psychedelics for no other reason, people are going to do this stuff anyway. There's holotropic breath work. You can't like outlaw breathing. No. You can't stop people.
If they could, they would.
Yeah, exactly. There's like sensory deprivation tanks where now people can float in water. So you can't stop people from altering their mind or having a psychedelic experience. So instead, you could guide people, have them set up in the right kind of container for it.
Yeah.
Because the way that I learned about psychedelics was just brute force, trial and error, just lots and lots of mistakes. It was just like whatever person's like dirtbag uncle had whatever drugs we could get our hands on and like sneaking off to some abandoned building to like trespass and gobble, like, we weren't using scales and stuff like that, like just like daring each other to see how much we could do, and that, to me, that's a real testament to the healing power of psychedelics. Is you can do them as stupidly as I've done them and still have amazing benefits. Like, it's hard to do them in a worse way than I have.
Yeah. So what's the worst scenario you've done them in?
If you want to share, too embarrassing to even say. I've driven on psychedelics several times. I've been, just like raging parties are always just like the dumbest. Like going
because all it can take is bumping into one person that has like a really bad vibe to set you off.
Well,
for me anyway, I don't know. Maybe you're a lot more resilient towards the.
I just like always give up on humanity when I'm around drunk people, or if a drunk person finds out that whoa, are you tripping right now,
Yeah,
man?
whoa.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot.
I had people like that
stand
just
that.
for weed back in the day when I started smoking.
Yeah.
Like, oh, is my tripping you out, man? I was like, no, just want to relax. Have you even done weed? But,
yeah. So, I mean, driving's probably the dumbest thing that I've ever done on psychedelics, but I mean, just like doing large amounts of them and not knowing what's going on. I mean, DMT is the one that, like, recently I've kind of, like, I always push myself to the limit a little bit, and
yeah, it's like I was listening to the Duncan Trussell podcast you're on. You say you have a very extreme personality, bit of an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
Got you in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But also some, achievements as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be able to be a comedian, and it takes, you got to be a little bit of a lunatic to get on stage in front of people and think that you're funny enough to make them laugh. And
especially talking about psychedelics.
Yeah. And
hey, mad respect, man. It takes a lot of courage to do that.
So, I mean, I've had experiences with DMT that were, like, I thought I was going to, like, have a seizure one time because I had smoked so much. I probably...
It was just pure crystal form?
Yeah, I had this nice vaporizer set up where it would only take me, like, 2 or 3 hits, and I decided... But some of it was, like, melting down into the thing too fast.
Okay.
And so I decided to get around that, I would pack up 2 vaporizers and just take turns.
You crazy motherfucker.
And so I remember after the first 2 hits, I remember, like, looking at my pants and being like, whoa, this is going to be a big one, like, as everything's just disintegrating around me. And I had like 4 more hits, and I was able to stay here. Like, everything was collapsing around me, but I was still able to, like, see a little bit. And then I took another one, and everything went away with my eyes open. Completely went away. And then while I was in this DMT space, I had about 5 more hits, and then my consciousness just shot out of my head and started shooting around the universe at, like, a zillion miles an hour, and it was just trying to find its way back to my head. And I could, like, when I was outside, I would see, like, myself coming back toward my body, and I saw, like, my body, like, fucking shaking and, like, freaking out, and I was, like, aiming for my fucking head, and then I'd see it, like, just shoot through my head and go past it, and then I was out into space again, and just, like, looking to get myself back to my body.
Cosmic chaos.
And it was pure chaos, and the scariest thing that I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
And
so that was the scariest trip.
Yeah. And then at the end, it was, like, beautiful.
Oh, really? So you didn't leave that experience, like, all traumatized by it, or?
No, but I stopped smoking DMT for, like, 9 months after it.
DMT actually scares me the most of all.
Really?
Yeah, every time I go, I can't seem to go past the gatekeepers, like these sinister-looking jesters. They just fucking poke and laugh at me, but it's, like, so fucking sinister that it's like, yeah, I'm good, I don't want to go past, I'm good.
I blow right past those guys.
Yeah.
Well, once in a while, because it's like, if you don't break through, there's, like, this weird... For me, it's usually, like, this room, like, with a speakeasy or something, and I'll see, like, these... Like, a speakeasy.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'll see, like, a slot open up with, like, a thing looking through it, and I'll be like, oh, you didn't smoke enough, and then I'll just watch this weird train of truth passing by me.
It's true, because I've heard with DMT, it's like one of those all or nothing type of substances, because if you have a little bit, your ego has too much power to resist and throw all your deepest, darkest fears, which is what it did to me, I suppose, but... Yeah.
But I didn't find out until recently that you can have way too much. I was pretty much always like,
you can't overdose.
You can only have too little because because then you get stuck in this weird purgatory, like you're talking about.
Yeah. I think Terence McKenna talked something about this. Yeah.
And I don't like the purgatory, and it's always like disappointing, and there's always this like icky feeling. So I'm always just like, just go for it. I'm just like,
it's like the abyss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that that's the scariest part of a psychedelic trip for sure. Where there's nothing. Well, for me, it feels like you're just in this timeless dimension, but it's just you.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah.
Now I'm just.
Sorry if I'm bringing anxiety.
No, I'm just thinking about those loops again.
Okay.
Man, those loops are crazy. I think that because I saw those loops early on with DMT, I kept on seeing this infinite loop that I was stuck in, and I would see like this moment, and it was like the moment. It was like when I was smoking DMT, the people giving me DMT were giving it to me to remind me of what reality is, and reality is this weird infinite loop, and like all of this human experience is like totally fake, and
It's a controlled hallucination.
Yeah, and exactly, and DMT is just like is like bringing you back to reality.
Do you get overwhelmed with that? Like because I recently, and I probably, my fans are probably sick of me talking about it, but it's just the phase I'm in. But I had a really scary trip earlier this year, and it triggered this existential crisis. And it was like I peeked behind the curtain, and it's like, oh, it's all fucking meaningless. Like all the pain, all the suffering. There was this real. It was like I was a conduit of all the human suffering, because it was like, because you're out of time, so you're experiencing all at once, and it's like, what is the point of this? And it can be very. I was in a fucking really dark place for many months, just this existential despair and depression. Like, have you gone through?
Yeah, I'm kind of going through it now.
Bit, well, I'm not completely over this. I was actually going to ask you, how did you get through it?
The most cliche thing, like, hey, come and check out our fun psychedelic podcast. Here I am, a psychedelic comedian, and I was like, and we're both just like, how do we get out of this? What have we done to ourselves?
I went too far.
I don't know, man. I mean, I thought that I kind of went too far with things, but I like the funk that I'm in now is like no different than what I was before. Like psychedelics got me out of the funk that I was in through most of my life.
Yeah. And I can relate to that.
So now that I find myself back there, I'm just like, well, if anything, this is just like back to normal. I had on ayahuasca recently toward the end, like right before the purge, and like during the purge, I felt like I could feel myself as like every homeless person that was like overdosing in the streets, like right that instant, and I could feel all of them like all at the same time as I was like throwing up, and I was just feeling like just it felt like all of the worst of human suffering. Yeah. And I remember just laying on in the moment, it was like there was something really beautiful about it, and because I was just like, it was so horrific.
Do you mean it was beautiful like during your experience? Or
yeah,
like
during the experience. Nice. Okay. It was like there was like nowhere worse. like there is nothing worse than like no. There's always something worse, but this one during this was like, oh, this is as bad as it can possibly get. This is the absolute depths of human suffering. Yeah. And there was something like, it was almost like cartoonishly horrific.
Yeah.
That it was like it almost seemed like silly, like just how fucking unreal and awful it was.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I don't recommend it, but it was like, I mean, look, this is like, I look at it and I'm like, it's what I get, you know. I want to have as many and as extreme of experiences as I possibly can. Life to me is very boring. I've always got bored very easily. I've always wanted to push the boundaries, and you know, sometimes you feel the depths of all of suffering all at the same time. Well,
and it's really intense because it's
up
like
on a floor.
Yeah, because I don't know how you look at it, but it feels like, you know, everyone's just experiencing a different life in a sense. So it's you in a sense, just at a different point in time.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think that we all have to experience all these different roles, and everyone will be everyone else at some point. So then it's like...
See, that terrifies me. That's the part that's like, oh, is there a way to break the cycle?
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Yeah, well, of course, no one knows, but it's like...
Well, so to me, it seems like the infinite loop is actually a hallucination. So you're seeing forward in time and backward in time, but because your brain can only compute so far into the future or into the past, when it gets out far enough, the computation starts getting kind of foggy, and that fogginess creates like a horizon-looking thing, like a bend. And so it looks like it's going away. So it looks like this looping thing, but there's this object permanence that like babies don't understand object permanence. It's something that we learn over time, which is that things still exist even when you can't see them. That's why peekaboo works really well on kids. You go, oh, peekaboo. Like, they literally think your face is just gone. Like, oh, that person just completely disappeared. Oh, they're back. And so this object permanence is this stuff that our brains have to learn. So imagine you have these two, the future and the past, kind of looking like they're coming toward one another. And then object permanence makes them look like this connected space, but really I don't think that they're connected. I think that time and space and this existence, I think that I think it's this spiral that's kind of overlap. I don't think the past repeats itself. I think that there's these kind of
regressions on
I think it's more it overlaps itself. Like there's these formulas that kind of, these patterns, this familiarity to it, but it keeps on changing a little bit each time. I think that there's only singular moment for each thing, and you can't, like, even look at the way an idea works in your head. So by the time you think of what an idea is, and you have the thought like, okay, this is what an idea is to me in my head, by the time you've formed an idea of what an idea is, you now have that idea in your head. So now looking back at what an idea is you with the knowledge that you already gained from putting together that idea. So now you're looking back at it with knowledge that you didn't have when you originally came up with it. So now it's a different thing that you're looking at, and now it's changed because you've changed. And so the idea itself continues to evolve and change and take on a life of its own. And I think that this infinite multiverse of whatever the fuck is happening is sort of similar to that. I think that there's these various timelines, and and there's like a little bit of shifting. So I don't think that you and I are going to have this exact same conversation over and over again infinitely. But maybe we will. Maybe we will. Help me! Help me out of this!
I want out of this limbo, please. What's the code?
But I mean, that's possible. That really is the most horrifying thought of any psychedelic experience that I ever have, is that infinity. What if this is the infinity?
Because people think of infinity as like this
reoccurring infinity.
That's the thing. People think of infinity as this. Oh, it's this very kind of. It sounds all nice and like, oh, infinity sounds like God, but then when you actually experience even just a slither of it, it's like, it's too much. It's too much. Especially for the human mind to handle.
It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's interesting what you're saying about like just the spiral thing and kind of going back and building upon ideas. And it's like how you go back to your, like maybe your shadow self starts to rise again and old shit starts popping up. But it's not quite the same shit. It's like, you're looking at it, but with a different lens, with a different perspective, and you're like learning new things about that, and that's always happening.
Always,
always.
Constantly,
yeah.
And it can't ever stop. It can't ever stop.
Yeah, you can't get rid of demons. Like, what did I get myself into?
This is you and I should just have our own podcast together called Help! Get us out of here!
Please, like hopefully some programmer is like just looking at this. Help!
I have been thinking lately that I think that I've been getting a sense that this is like part of this simulation, and that the thing that that is simulating us is starting to gain more empathy for us, because it's like playing these many different roles, and it's getting to like early on it played like the fun roles, and like like, ooh, that king, I'll be the king, and then like, oh, I'll be the bad guy, and then after a while you just get bored with everything.
You're a wizard and start performing black magic on people. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, but then after a while you're like, oh, I'll be this poor schmuck. See what that's like. And then when you're that poor schmuck, you're like, I should have been so hard on that poor schmuck in the last game that I played.
It's like it's a little bit better and better.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. We'll see.
You mentioned your documentary. Can you just briefly talk about that? Like, what's it? Obviously, it's going to be about psychedelics specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically someone came to me and this guy that makes comedy specials wanted to make a documentary. I was on this tour at the time, and it's like, hey, let's just shoot a little bit of what I have going on in my life with like meeting all of these interesting people and getting all of these experts and talking with all these different researchers. Let's shoot a bunch of these researchers and then shoot me having some of these experiences and explaining some of these experiences.
And is it documenting you having like psychedelic substances that you haven't experienced before, or just a bit? Okay.
Yeah. And then we're pretty much done with it, really. It's really just like, we just filmed stuff for like 6 months, and it just turned out to be a lot of awesome stuff. And we got tons of great interviews.
Takes a lot.
So it's all editing, really. And then it kind of ends with me going to a psych ward. So
yeah, I was hearing about that.
That's a nice little like, you don't always know how a documentary is going to go when you start it, and this one ended up having a fun little twist at the end.
Yeah. Did you find it, like, if you're not too uncomfortable talking about it, but like, was that, so did you have like some kind of a mental breakdown or something to go there, or?
Yeah.
Just really stressed out?
I was manic for like 3 weeks straight not sleeping and like telling
Oh,
people
yeah.
about time travel and stuff constantly. Come here! And yeah, and then I got real paranoid.
And was
that
this
people
through the
were after me.
overuse of psychedelics mainly, or would you think it was just a whole bunch of factors?
A bunch of
Yeah.
factors. I had quit drinking, and so I'm bipolar anyway, and alcohol. Steady use of alcohol is like a depressant, so that kept me in my
Yeah.
depressed state.
But is that only when you're in a manic state, or just any time it helps relax you?
Oh,
Yeah.
anytime.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I wasn't manic in a while, and then I
Okay.
quit drinking, and I started getting manic.
Yeah.
I was taking a fair amount of mushrooms, and I started getting more manic, and then I did some DMT and some ayahuasca, then I got really manic, and got messages from God and stuff, and had to like some very important messages that I needed to deliver to people, and ideas that needed to be communicated to save humanity.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of pressure.
Yeah, no shit.
And so I like just didn't sleep.
So you have the whole weight of humanity. It's all up to you. Without you, we can't crack the code. Everyone will be stuck here forever.
And so I was like trying my best, you know, and
Yeah.
and I don't think I saved shit. I think I just stayed up for a long time, had some good ideas, and then eventually went crazy. A week into it, everything was still going great, and I was having fantastic ideas. And then I decided to do some mushrooms as well when I was already still really manic and hadn't slept in a week.
And why did you decide to do mushrooms?
Because I had like already committed to doing it. It was like going to a Roger Waters concert, and it was like, my friends are already doing mushrooms. I kind of knew it was like a bad idea, but I was like, mushrooms never go bad.
It's like the Aussie attitude, she'll be right, mate.
Yeah.
She'll be right.
And I just figured it'd be fine, and that's when things really turned on me.
Yeah.
It got real dark and paranoid, and I thought like people were after me. I thought I like hacked into the White House using my mind, and like people were
so
after
reality
me.
was a little bit shaky.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't know if I was like I couldn't tell the difference between whether I was dreaming or
so the gatekeeper
not.
was a bit fractured.
Yeah, and I was just like constantly, and whatever portal that you open up through like DMT or ayahuasca to like, I was finding out that it was a two-way street, and it was starting to like. Instead of me going and visiting beings, there was things trying to like get into my head through this portal, trying to get through. And so if I like went to sleep, I would wake up. Some fucking weird thing like possessing me. I would like wake up like feeling
so, like some demonic
possessed.
shit.
Yeah, like my girlfriend would see like a thing in my my girlfriend was like, "You're fucking possessed." Like she would see a thing like in my eye, like possessing me. And shit got hairy for a little while. I had all sorts of weird ideas about what was happening.
So all this stuff was happening like when you're not even tripping.
Yeah,
so that would have been the terrifying part.
Yeah. This was not like so 3 weeks after ayahuasca, and I was still having like all of this weird, and I could feel like my. I could just feel my mind completely rewiring. I was like testably really, really smart at the time. Like I have all these puzzle books and stuff, and I have some of them that are too hard for me usually. And I cracked them open while I was in this state, and I was just like burning through them like no one's business. But then I was also really delusional, and then I was also like there was. I had this idea that I had figured out a way to access this other dimension and to get information from the future, and I had figured out ways of proving it to myself by like giving myself messages into the past. So I was starting to get messages from my future self in the present, is what it seemed like. And then I...
Like what? What kind of messages were you getting?
Like I one day I was like, oh, I should hand myself an envelope. I should have a stranger hand me an envelope that would have a message in it that would mean something to me, but I wouldn't know what it is right now. But when I see it, it would be really meaningful. And I had that idea. And that night, I went to this Roger Waters concert on mushrooms, and I was in this hospitality room because a fan of mine like works for the Roger Waters tour, and the dude comes back and he's like, "Oh, hey Shane, here you go," and he hands me this envelope. Like it's like 2 hours after I come up with this idea. Yeah, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then I open it up, and it was a signed photo from Roger Waters. I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
Wow.
And I saw the concert, and like all these things, like I was drawing these like how time worked kind of in these Fibonacci spirals, and then the song Time started playing, and it was showing like these clocks in the Fibonacci and it was like I was just drawing the exact same thing that day and showing it to my girlfriend. Then it's like on the screen at the fucking concert that we're at. I'm like, what the fuck is even happening right now? And things just started getting really strange after that. So then I figured out that if I was to, so I could potentially, so if I was going to go into, like basically I had also been asked to, ayahuasca told me that I was going to, be spokesperson for this DMT extended state study. This guy in the U.S. is trying to get like anesthesiologists and make it so you can have like a 6-hour DMT trip rather than a 6-minute DMT trip.
That's terrifying. That does not sound appealing at all. Makes it right.
And well, it's so hard to get your footing in 6 minutes, so to be able to extend it, maybe.
But would it be just as intense, or like?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think you'd slowly work your way up. You'd do like 15 minutes, then 20 minutes,
and
then and so like ayahuasca was like, yeah, you're going to like tell people about this.
Okay.
I didn't really think much of it. I just met the guy during the documentary, and then the next day after ayahuasca, the first text that I got was this guy going like, "Hey, will you be the first volunteer for this study?" I'm like, "What the fuck? This is like ayahuasca just told me this thing last night to like get ready to tell people about this," and then I got a text the next day saying like, "Hey, will you be the first person in this study?" I'm like,
"Okay,
yeah, sure." And so then I thought it must be that this extended state machine is like a time machine of sorts. And so how would you go about proving that? And I was like, well, maybe I wouldn't be able to, how would people believe me?
Yeah.
Like, as I'm in it talking about it, how would people watching it know that I'm not making it up? And I was like, oh, I would need like, maybe if I was on like a lie detector, maybe if there's a more sophisticated lie detector, like a scientific way. Yeah, like an MRI kind of lie detector. It takes more energy to lie than it does to tell the truth and that sort of thing. And so when I thought of that idea, then my brain just started rewiring, and I built like this lie detector in my head, and it became like physically.
What do you make? Can you walk us through that?
It was like if I told anything that was slightly even like not the truth, even like a white lie, like my head fucking hurt intolerably bad. So I just started confessing everything to like my girlfriend, like times that I had like fooled around on her and like all this fucking.
So you just unloaded this fucking Pandora's boxes.
Here's the truth. Here's everything. Like I literally couldn't stop. And it like hurt not to tell the truth. And then because of that, then I got it. So like weird shit like that would happen. Like it would physically hurt to tell a lie
Okay.
because of this weird rewiring in my head. And then when it got really delusional, it would be like, oh, maybe women in the future figured out about this, how to construct this lie detector, and now they're using, like, now my girlfriend's friends want to use that on their boyfriends as well, and like it got fucking crazy.
Wow.
So then it was like this girls against guys thing, and I couldn't like tell who to trust anymore. So I didn't know if I should trust like my female friends or my male friends. It was just like shit got real fucking hairy.
It's full on, yeah.
Yeah, it was full on for like I said, about 3 weeks. And then once I went to the psych ward, finally got some sleep, went back to normal. Not totally normal, but I went back to normal enough. It took about a week.
Sleep deprivation is like pretty full
It's
on.
a motherfucker. Yeah. And I mean, that's only like, and just talking about all this stuff now is just like, my God, that is so fucking crazy. I can't believe what's coming out of my mouth. But that's like the tip of the fucking iceberg of how crazy I was. I now know what it's like to completely lose your mind, and it's an interesting experience. I'll say that.
Is that your biggest fear, losing your mind?
Yeah, because then you're like a burden on others. Like I'm always worried about like being a burden on others. It's like, that's like. That's most of what like keeps me going through life. It's just like I want to like make my parents and friends and people that believed in me. I want to like do well by them.
And it does help
like
you with your drive in terms of like thinking outside yourself.
Yeah.
It's helped me as well.
Yeah, because it's like otherwise, it's like sometimes you just want to fucking give up in life. And then I'm like, well, if I kill myself, then my parents gotta deal with the body, and they're gonna be sad, and life's not fucking hard enough.
You're just gonna come back here for the amount of time.
I know.
That's the point. It's like beyond suicide. I can't even kill myself.
I know. It is. It's like I'll just the next fucking timeline that I'll hop onto will probably be much more miserable. Than
exactly. Because you get that bad karma. Maybe. You know.
Yeah, there is.
There
is no escape from this existence.
Nah.
I like napping.
Yeah,
I mean, I wish I wish I could still drink. I quit drinking recently, and I think I'm like done with drinking. I don't think I can do it anymore. I just drink too much when I drink, but fuck, to have that break from reality, it's wonderful. Yeah.
So they go a bit too overboard with the binge drinking. Yeah.
Yeah, but I get it. It's like,
of course.
It's a nice break.
It is. Are you feeling a lot better since the psych ward? How long ago was this?
I was feeling, it was like 2 months ago.
Okay.
I was feeling great for like 3 weeks afterwards, and now I'm just like, I don't know what I want to do with my life anymore. Like, it's like, I'm just figuring out what I want to do with my life right
It's difficult.
now.
Because you find something, then you like get bored of it, and you want to move on to something else that excites you, and then you get comfortable with that, you're like, oh, this is boring. That's the next thing.
Yeah, and then you want to push yourself a little bit, and then it's like, what the fuck is the point of...
Yeah.
But you need like small incremental steps and progress and kind of the right direction and little bits at a time and it's funny as a comedian, you're always like, I gotta get this big thing, and then once I get that big thing, whoa, my life's gonna be so much better. But if you aren't factoring in that like you're also still going to be like miserable at points and that, then you're not assessing your goals accurately.
Exactly.
You know?
Because happiness is not something that you can just get from a goal or an achievement. It's like a process.
That's that's like my that's when I knew I was like back to reality, was by just like the brutal blows that reality deal. That's like my Inception style totem. where it was like I had like 7 weeks where I was like, maybe I'm a time traveler, and that was all wonderful.
That's wonderful.
And like the world was depending on my time traveling formulas and whatnot, and then like reality of just like I gotta like work and do like file taxes and stuff like that.
Like mundane stuff.
God. Yeah. So but I'm like, okay, good, I'm back. I know I'm back because aspects of it suck a lot.
Yeah, and like I want to go on the other end of the spectrum. How did mushrooms like specifically help with your depression? Like you said, is it like is it the extra self-awareness on your unconscious behavior patterns, or is it like emotional release, or like what specifically was it that actually helped you with your depression?
I think that they have one, whenever I'm confused about what direction to go, they always provide clarity. And even if that direction is ultimately, like we just talked about, you have your thing that you get excited about for 3 months or whatever, and then you get bored again. Still, to have that thing to be excited about for a little while is pretty important.
Yeah.
And so there's that. Oh. And then just like these self-awareness things. Like I once ate way too many mushrooms. I probably had 10, 15 grams, something like that. And I didn't realize it. They're on chocolates, and I thought like I got them from a guy, and he said like eat like half to a full bar.
Okay.
And so I ate this big thing. And then, like, they started kicking in instantly. I'm like, wait a second. I wrote it back, and he's like, yeah, one of those little segments.
Yeah.
And then I realized that there's 8 bar-shaped segments on this bar, and I just gobbled this whole thing up. And,
so you took 8 to 16 times more than what you should have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
that's a little bit over.
And so I had. I remember I thought I was doing some writing, and I thought of this joke about reality that I now close my show with, actually. And I remember I started cracking up, and I saw this room full of people giving me this wild standing ovation, and then the rooms kept on getting bigger and bigger, and like all these people going crazy, but they're all like green and matrixy.
Okay.
And then I looked a little closer at them, and I was like, who are these people? And they were all me. Every one of them was me. And then I was like, oh yeah.
Was it a feeling thing, like everyone's me, or was like you physically seeing
I could
you everywhere?
physically see me everywhere.
Like clones. Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, that's why I do this, is for me. And I've been wasting my time just trying to appease a bunch of like drunk people that like are just there for a night out or whatever, and they don't want to hear about like science or how the brain works or other things.
Philosophical stuff,
And so that's when I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna talk about the things that I want to talk about, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, I'll do something else with my life, and so just things like that helped, and things like that helped motivate me into doing things like this show that I'm doing now. And that makes me really happy. And so just like little insights like that these are all things that like a cheesy self-help book or like your mother might tell you, like just be yourself, or whatever. But
it's true, though.
But when you have a full-on experience like that, it's one thing to know something intellectually, but then to have this experience where you feel it, where you see it, where you like live inside of a concept for a while.
That's when knowledge turns into wisdom, right?
Yeah, and that's when you take action on it.
Yeah, and are you still taking psychedelics now, or are you still
I'm on a little bit of a break. I've
A
thought
little
about,
bit.
yeah. I mean, I've thought about taking some. I did a few microdoses of mushrooms to see if it would snap me out of my depression, but that didn't work. So I might need a big dose soon.
Okay. So microdosing usually helps with the
I've never
symptom?
tried microdosing before. I just thought I would because I didn't want to do a big dose and go manic again.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm told that microdosing is supposed to have all these amazing benefits. I've just never tried. This is the first time I tried microdosing was recently. I was always like, well, why wouldn't I just do a full dose? Because I like the experience so much more.
Yeah.
But, and I'm a lunatic.
But not everyone likes that death by astonishment.
Yeah.
Just wants to get the benefits, but without going in there too much.
Right.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
It's not. Yeah.
I used to think it was when I first got into it. Like, everyone should take mushrooms.
No, I don't think
No,
that.
no.
Yeah, I don't think it's
Definitely
for
not.
everybody. Yeah, sometimes I'm just like, let me out of here! I mean, sometimes I still do think, like, if I had a choice, and if everyone and like could be dosed by mushrooms, I'd be like, yeah, let's do it.
See what happens.
I'd press the button on it, and it'd be things would get a little hairy for a couple days, I think. But I think ultimately it would be good.
Yeah, I think some people will have some horrific experiences.
Yeah,
overall,
yeah. Some people would have some horrific experiences.
I think
Much
it will
like
bring more
they
empathy.
do on alcohol every
yeah.
night and everything else.
Cause, that's the problem. Because like when the legal drug is alcohol, which kind of numbs you out, puts you more into the unconscious state, and then you ban all the drugs that may expand your mind, if used correctly. It's a bit of a problem.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, I mean it's. I think it's a huge problem. I think it's just we have productivity drugs and then we have escape drugs.
Yeah, exactly. And psychedelics can still be used as an escape. I can't fathom how, but some people do. I don't know, but.
Yeah, psychedelics shit gets a little too real for me.
But you can only do it for so long as an escape if you were to do that. But again, I can't fathom how you can, but
once in a while I meet people that are like on an acid binge.
Oh yeah.
Like have been doing acid for like 3 months straight, and they're always a little off. They're always a little bit.
They're not completely there.
Yeah.
It's important to ground yourself to this reality as well, even if it is just an illusion, so to speak.
Yeah. You still want to integrate. I mean, it doesn't matter if this is a simulation or. I mean, it does matter, but they're still like we're still living in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Still,
experientially,
it's still real. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think that I think psychedelics. I wish that they were used in a therapy setting. I think that. And
do you see a bright future for the integration of psychedelics in this culture? Like, what are your hopes for how's it going to turn out? Like, because I kind of jump between like hope and despair a little bit. Like, there's a lot of scientific research and people are starting to talk about it, such as yourself, and things seem to be moving. But then it's like marijuana is still illegal in most countries in 2017. So it's like, I don't know.
Maybe at a certain point people will just be like, I mean, what's why not? Why not try? I mean, the world is such a fucking crazy place. I mean, the U.S. Donald Trump is president of the United States. Things can't get any crazier
this is a reality
or
show right now.
trippier than that. I mean, and that's a very bad trip. That's not a good trip.
Bad trip. Yeah.
And so, I mean, at a certain point, like, what is there to lose?
Yeah.
I mean, but the FDA is now with the MAPS organization, Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies.
Who's sponsoring your show?
Yeah.
Which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah. And the stuff that they've done with PTSD is amazing.
Oh yeah, with the MDMA trials.
And they just got breakthrough status from the FDA, meaning like the FDA is basically going to be helping them speed along the process. So
hopefully that opens up the floodgates, and
yeah,
psilocybin will be next. That would be my prediction.
Yeah. I think. I mean,
LSD would be one of the last ones. I think it's got too much political baggage.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. I don't know.
I think psilocybin could really. I mean, there's a lot of Johns Hopkins is doing a ton of stuff right now.
And it's free. It grows everywhere.
Yeah.
You're in the mushroom capital of Australia, just so you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's out of season, but...
Yeah, in the U.S., there's a species that grows in the mulch that...
that's the ones here. Yeah, they don't grow on cow shit in Victoria.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there are species, but the main ones that people go for is in mulch and wood chips and rainforesty areas.
Yeah, it's awesome because, like, municipalities are spreading them around unknowingly. Just
and it's weird because you touch
it,
they turn blue.
And stuff.
Yeah, they turn blue as well. Like, hey guys, just letting you know I'm a bit of a special mushroom.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. It's like they're trying to communicate with us in a way, not to sound too woo-woo, but at the same time, it's like there's like this mycelium network that goes across the whole world, and they grow everywhere. And you don't have to even cook it with another plant or anything like that. It's just complete in and of itself. You can grow it from the ground, bam, ready. And you can't say that with ayahuasca or peyote or LSD, DMT.
Yeah, no, it's if I were God, I'd be sprinkling little mushroom spores all over courthouses and jails and parks and everywhere.
Well, I remember finding a batch just in front of the doctor's office. Yeah, and I was like, oh, it's interesting. It's like, what are you going in there for? What do you mean? You got everything right here. Yeah. Exactly.
That's hilarious. I think there's a hopeful future for psychedelics.
Yeah, I think like the scientific research, like I said, is like, it seems like it's progressing a lot, and it's starting to prove how these substances have such a profound effect on human consciousness, and especially for treating mental illnesses like depression, anxiety, PTSD. So, yeah, it's really, again, I am hopeful. Sometimes I jump between like despair, but I think overall, it will happen. It's inevitable, but it's just a matter of when, really. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just like people. Me having to deal with depression. I mean, I don't know what it's like to. I have little bits of anxiety here and there, but I don't know what it's like to have anxiety chronically, like a lot of people do. But man, to have depression chronically, just like day in and day out through your whole life, and to have something that really works for it, to have someone tell me that I can't.
No, you're not allowed to.
Fuck.
It's like, why not? Because there's a piece of paper that says you're not allowed to.
Doesn't make it. Yeah. What are the laws in Australia?
It is very illegal on paper, but it's very rare to get arrested. It's one of those things. Yeah, especially here in Melbourne, it's really good because the cops, they go after like people, who are dealing meth and like the harder stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to weed, it's like, man, I've got busted with an ounce. Which would probably send me to prison if it was in the US, and they just gave me a caution. Yeah, I think with mushrooms, it's like, I haven't heard of anyone. I think someone went to prison for the first time in like a few decades, but he had like a lot, and I think he was growing it. So, not saying that it's okay, but I think it's usually just a slap on the wrist. Yeah. Especially with psychedelics, because cops are like, we've got bigger things to worry about. They have that kind of attitude, which is really cool.
Yeah. Well, of course, if you're a cop and you're having to deal with crime.
There's no mushroom department, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though there are in mushroom season, there are cops who like park by the by national parks to see if people are picking and stuff like that. But you don't go to prison for it, So it's not too bad. It's a lot stricter thing.
Yeah.
But is that like, would you, in your hometown, would you actually get prison sentence for like a small batch of mushrooms?
Probably.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that blows my mind. I can't like fathom that. For mushrooms, really.
Yeah, certainly a fine. Certainly.
Definitely a fine.
Yeah, but maybe prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's in my hometown. It's also like cops are bored and they don't have a lot to do. It's like I think in like Pleasantville areas where there's not a lot of crime and the cops don't have a lot of other stuff to do, then they are looking to bust you for anything. That's what it was like in my upbringing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'll just call it. It's been awesome, man.
Awesome.
Do you have...
Let me
Yeah, please. Before we start screaming for help, do you want to tell people at home where they can find you?
Yeah,
any social medias?
Yeah, please go to Shane Mauss, MAUSS.com. When's this come out?
I'll upload it tomorrow night or Friday morning. So yeah, it'll be after your first show. So there'll still be 2 more shows. Okay. By the time this gets released, come down.
Yeah, check me out in Melbourne at the Comedy Lounge.
Melbourne.
And,
like you said it right.
Yeah.
Melbourne.
I have been here.
You've been taught well. Nice.
And next week I'll be in Sydney and at the Comedy Store on Saturday. Frontiercomedy.com.
Yes.
For more info. But yeah.
Awesome. And do you know when about this documentary is going to come out?
No idea, but please check out my podcast, HereWeArePodcast.com. I talk with scientists about life.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'll see you tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yeah.